to welcome you to our program today. We have a very special guest with us. Her name is Pam Wilson. She's from Altoona, Iowa. She is a speaker and also an author. So Pam, thank you so much for being a guest on our show today. And I'm very excited about this. You have written a book entitled Falling Into My Place. And so kind of the symbol or the theme here is that would be that of a snowflake. And I see you got a nice big snowflake here that you brought today. And so why don't you just share, well, first of all, share a little bit about your background. I know that you've had a lot of, as far as experience and years of teaching. Why don't you just share a little bit about that and maybe what you learned with all your teaching, from all your teaching. Of course, that would probably, go ahead.
That would take a few years.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
God has been very good to me. I've been a teacher for 36 years, started out in the public school and had a job there for about 5 years, and then our family started coming along, so I kind of had to stop teaching, and then God gave, I won't get into the long story, but God gave me this position at Dwayne Christian, and I've been there for I was there for 22 years before I retired, so
wow,
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, that's really great. And so, falling into my place, your book. Share a little bit about it as far as, what inspired you to write the book. And
yeah. When I retired, it was kind of a bucket list goal, Jeff, and I had known way too many short, cute people, high schoolers, and right on up to old people like myself who really don't know what God's purpose is for their life and never felt very special or very important or even very smart. And I, as a teacher, saw their skills and talents. Some of them are a little easier to see than others. Some of them aren't so easy, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that later. But I wrote this book so that people would be able not only to be encouraged themselves, but to use what they found in the book to encourage the people they love in their lives. And indeed, when I got my master's degree, I just felt that there was a man, and again, we may talk about this later, named Dr. Howard Gardner, and he just confirmed, his research confirmed everything I believed about people, that we are all smart. We're just smart in different ways. And not only that, but our birth order helps to make us who we are. So as a teacher, I've seen all those things, and that's why I wrote the book. I wanted people to be inspired.
To be inspired, and it sounds like, well, just the idea of a snowflake. I mean, snowflakes, and there's no two alike, right?
That's what they say.
Okay. And so so then no two people are exactly alike either. And so with that in mind, then why is there so much of an emphasis? I think the part of the problem that so many people have that maybe don't feel like they've got a purpose, or they're kind of down, they're just not excelling maybe in the way that they could, that there's just so much emphasis or pressure to try to conform today, to try to conform to some image or likeness that maybe you really just can't fit into. What's your take on that?
I agree with you. I think as a teacher, and I don't have a lot of time to get into it, but I feel like we put too much emphasis on math and reading and all those things. They're important, yes. But again, all of us have, like, there's a man, probably 2 or 3 years ago, the coldest day of the winter, our furnace went out.
Okay.
This guy, I think he finished high school, but he didn't go to college. He's our furnace repair guy. He couldn't get over there that night, so my husband and I huddled together, and tried to stay warm till the next day. He came over, he went downstairs and looked at our furnace and took out this little bottle of spray oil, sprayed it on there. The furnace fan went back on, and our house was warm again. And I said, how did you learn? His name was Mike. He lives in our town in Altoona. I said, Mike, how did you learn all about this? He says, you know, I really don't know, but when I was a little boy, my mom set this old toaster on the shelf, and I asked her if I could play with it. And she said, sure, because it was broken. And he said, I got my dad's toolkit out, and I played around with that for a while and set it back on the shelf. My mom popped some toast in, not forgetting that it was broken, and it worked.
Isn't that something?
He was just really good
Yeah.
at putting things together like that. And there are a lot of people in our world who have those talents and skills that are so helpful to people. And we've got to make sure that all the kids in our school have a chance to find their niche and excel. You know, what are you good at? What do you like to do? Billy, tell Susie what you think she's good at, you know, and just encourage one another.
Well, if I understand right, Albert Einstein, he wasn't the best student in school, but yet it seems like he's always kind of regarded as being the most intelligent man to ever exist, or at least that's, you know, sometimes, you know, the way people talk about him. But that would be another example of that is, you know, here's a very intelligent man, but yet he must have felt like he was really less than superlative when he was growing up then.
Yeah. And you wonder, I don't know the whole story there, but you wonder who made him feel like that, you know, because sometimes we as adults make people feel like that, or kids feel like that they're not important. Why can't you be like your brother Johnny, you know, because I'm not Johnny.
Yeah, so bringing out the gifts, the abilities, the talents that people have. And you mention about, you know, intelligent, that everybody is intelligent, you know, just like, you know, fixing the furnace or the toaster. You know, having that ability, but maybe the way the systems are set up, that a person like that is not able to maybe discover their talent. I mean, fortunately for this man, he did, but how many, in a sense, Albert Einsteins are out there, but they never blossom or shine because are trying to conform to some kind of a system that just is not going to bring out the best in that person. I mean, some people seem like they excel in these systems, and other people, they aren't. And then they feel like they are less than average.
Right.
You know, but you're like, your argument here is that everybody is intelligent. And so how would you kind of define, though, like, are there certain kinds of intelligences, or when we're all intelligent? I mean, if everybody's intelligent, but how is that, you know, kind of channeled, so to speak, or maybe the different types of intelligences?
Let me go back real quickly, though, and help our teachers out, because I'm not criticizing our teachers, you know. They're so busy trying to do all the things that they're asked to do, and some of the intelligences that I want to talk about are hard to see. Many intelligences, and going on to Dr. Gardner's multiple intelligences, there are 9 that he lists, and like one of them is musical intelligence. So, I mean, we've all seen and heard people who have musical intelligence. They're awesome at it. And that's so easy to see. But a couple of the stories I hope I get to share with you today are ones that I'm just glad I caught as a teacher, because I almost missed them. And they're pretty amazing. So the 9 intelligences, briefly, and I hope I can remember them all.
Yeah.
Natural intelligence has to do, it's called nature smart, people who love being outside and know about flowers and animals and the world around them. Visual spatial intelligence, people could be more artistic. And in the back of my book, there's a website that I hope people will go to, because you can find out what your strongest intelligences are. And from there, you can find careers, which a lot of young people are looking for, and hobbies. As an old person, I'm always looking for a fun hobby to do. So we've got natural intelligence, we've got visual spatial intelligence, which has to do with art, verbal linguistic with words, bodily kinesthetic, people are good at exercising and running. That's not one of my strongest ones, but all 3 of my children are Boston Marathon runners.
Wow.
They're very athletic, and I am a klutz. But I get my best ideas for writing when I'm out walking. So, musical intelligence we mentioned, bodily kinesthetic, spatial, logical spatial intelligence, Two that have to do with more your personality are intrapersonal, and I'm kind of a person that prefers my own company. I don't go out and get in a group of my friends all the time. I'm on my computer. Interpersonal, people who love being with others. They love to go out to eat together, and they can hardly wait to get together. They know a lot about people and seem to make good managers. So I hope that you'll get something out of all that. And
Yeah.
anyway, the stories about those are amazing. So
Yeah, so just understanding that everybody's intelligent, but just understanding, just what kind of creativity or what area of intelligence that you actually possess in your life. And okay, so when you think about people, or you think of like youth, you mentioned about children in a family that sometimes, you see one child, and then it's so tempting just to judge, to say that they're all going to be the same way. Like if this one child is bad, then, we just assume that they're all going to be bad. They all got a bad reputation. Or if one is good, that they're all going to be good. Or I remember this one boy who was such a great athlete, in high school. And so everybody thought now his younger brother was going to be this great athlete. Well, he had no interest in athletics, but I'll tell you, he became quite the trumpeter in the band. But it's something how children, they have the same parents, and they're growing up in the same house, and they have the same other influences, like teachers and pastors and neighborhood people, but yet they're different. I mean,
Yes.
So kind of explain the family a little bit as far as, I think a lot of people are interested in that. Like you have a family, you might have one child, or you might have 10 children, and somehow they all have a position in the family. You've done some research in this area too, haven't you?
I'm not real good at this, but there's a man named Dr. Henry Adler, I believe is the name, and of course Dr. Kevin Lehman, who's written the birth order book. And much of my information came from him, so I do want to give him some credit for that. I find birth order fascinating, and I must admit my husband gets so kind of embarrassed at me sometimes, but he'll tell the stories later about people I've met while we're out, and I listen to them for a while, and then I'll say, "You're the oldest child in your family, aren't you?" And they'll go, "Whoa." We were recently in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and went up on one of those chairlifts to the top, and there was a man up there who was just telling all about the park and how wonderful it was, and go to this ride and do that. And when we came back to go back down the mountain, he was doing the same thing. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you the last child in your family? Are you the youngest child?" And he said, "How did you know that?" Youngest children make very good salespeople.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're just, and a funny thing about this one, in my book, Jeff, I call them the blizzard, because the youngest child in the family is usually involved in a blizzard of hair-raising activity, just so they can steal the attention away from the older brothers and sisters. But where was I going with that? The youngest child.
But that's the whole thing about, the family order.
Yes.
What makes, that youngest child the good salesman, or maybe like a comedian that's looking for
Exactly.
attention.
Yeah, that's what they are. Most of the famous comedians in the world were the youngest child in their family.
And is it because just they have to almost really be creative to get noticed?
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Middle children are peacemakers because they're stuck right in the middle. They don't like arguments. And Jeff, I found that the years that I had my very best classes in school, where everyone just seemed to get along and, no problems. One day I said, how many of you are the middle child in your family? And about every hand went up. The next year, I had all kinds of problems. Kids were arguing with one another. No, we're going to do it my way, and they couldn't work together in a group. And so finally I said, okay, how many of you are the oldest child in your family, or the oldest boy or oldest girl? And about every hand went up. Because it's just, you know, an oldest child takes charge for the most part and is a good leader, like the presidents of the United States. Over half of the presidents of the United States are either the oldest child in their family or the oldest boy in their family. And the rest of them, and I kind of made the mistake in my book of saying most, all of the presidents, because that's not true. I think it's 22 out of 44, but for some reason, like they had a death in the family of older brothers.
Oh,
And
okay.
that just, so things like that, or remarriage in the family, can affect birth order a little bit too.
Okay, yeah, so you got the oldest child, and you got the youngest child, and then you have, you know, the middle child, and the middle child is generally the peacemaker, the older one is the leader, the younger one is kind of the, I mean, everybody has an important role here, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I suppose depending upon how many children are in a family, they all have some kind of a role. You know, I even, in some of my research in this, that sometimes you might even have one who's kind of the antagonist of the family. They always want to kind of stir the pot. And I suppose a lot of this then relates not just to education, but also the church. You know, you can kind of see where everybody, you know, the role that they had in their family is kind of the role that they bring to the church then as well. I can almost ask some people, like, are you the middle child?
Yep.
Or the youngest or whatever, so it probably pertains, but you know, but as
Yeah.
far as children and education and things like that, to be, you know, I think for a teacher and for others to be perceptive and aware, having this awareness to say, well, that makes sense, that this person is a middle child, and so that's why they are, you know,
Yeah.
being peacemakers in the classroom, or this one's being a leader, being the oldest, and yeah, well, I find that also fascinating. Yeah.
It can also help us too when we understand that. Like, I'm a firstborn, and my little sister came along 8 years, you know, younger. I've just made up my mind that, okay, yeah, I can be bossy, but I've got to back off of that, because I'm not going to be effective serving the Lord if I'm bossy and in your face telling you what to do all the time, you know.
Yeah.
So if I have a good idea, I'll share it.
And you know, then of course, you know, like with family, but also in society and children anymore, I think we're getting to be more sensitive, you know, as far as boys and girls. You know, a lot of times we think, you know, things apply to boys, whereas girls, but girls are this, you know, the same way. I mean, aren't they, you know, the oldest girl maybe, like
Yes.
you're mentioning, the leader, and
Yep.
and you maybe just like we say, well, boys, you know, the oldest boy is a leader, then the youngest one's the clown or the comedian or the sales
Yeah.
person. Whereas, but does that apply then for the women, for the girls as well? Then,
Right, because you can be the second child, the middle child, but the oldest girl in your family. So that makes you a natural born leader, too. I mean,
oh, I see. So
Right.
being that, yes.
or if you were the second child in the family, but you had an older sister, then that would make you a firstborn because you are the oldest boy in your
Oh, I
family.
see. So a lot of it does have to do with you know, not just your birth order, but also your
Yeah.
order as far as what
Gender.
you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here again, the book is "Falling Into My Place" by Pam Wilson, and the book, I'm guessing, where can it all be purchased if somebody's interested here to get a copy of it?
That's a good question right now. Amazon.com. The original publisher for my book was Crossbooks, but they have gone out of business
Oh, I see.
with that. And so now Westbow Press with Thomas Nelson and Zondervan has taken up my book. And I just received an email from them before I came over this way today about the final proof and all that. So it will soon, I'm sure it's still available on Amazon. And that
Yeah,
kind
so
of
if you
thing.
go to Amazon.com, falling into my place,
Right.
and so that's where, as people, we're like snowflakes, but yet we all come together, and hopefully we fall in our place, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to share a little bit
Yeah,
about
share a little bit about
snowflakes.
this snowflake here.
When I first started thinking about snowflakes, I found actually three interesting things. Snowflakes and people are a lot alike. We all come in different sizes, and so do snowflakes. So the Guinness Book of World Records goes back to 1887 in, I believe it's Fort Keogh, Montana. And the largest snowflake ever measured was 15 inches across and 8 inches deep. And of course, that's before they really had pictures and cameras, so it's not been verified. But I just looked that up the other evening, and they have measured some not too long ago that were 6 inches across. So we're talking a pretty good sized snowflake here. So we all come in different sizes, and just like people, snowflakes also fall to the earth in different colors. And I never knew that.
Oh, they do? I guess I didn't either.
Yeah.
I thought they were all just white.
And so snowflakes can be black or brown, red, yellow, and even green and blue.
Really?
Yes. Now, of course, Jeff, you and I have never known any green people, unless you've ever been sick or green with envy.
Right, okay.
Yes, we talked about this. And the only blue people we know is the Blue Man's Group, but I don't think they really count.
Okay.
But I think for basic things that are in the atmosphere, that's what causes that. And I was just, the color, and I was talking with a young man just not too long ago who told me an interesting story about climbing somewhere on some mountain in the Alps or wherever, and they had traveled along the little path there on the side of the mountain, and all of a sudden came upon something that looked like blood all over the snow. And they were really worried that it was somebody that got hurt or an animal, and come to find out there had been a red snow on the mountain that day. And all the path in that area had kind of started to melt, so it looked like blood, but it was actually red snow.
I've never heard of that
He
before,
hadn't either.
but how
I think
interesting.
He learned it on a nature show on one of the channels. So.
But like the snow,
Yeah.
people, we come in different sizes, different colors.
And like we just talked about, they also fall to the earth in the different order. You know, the first snowfall of the season. And it's funny, Jeff, because the snowfalls, when you think about it, that first snowfall of the year, especially for little kids, like my kids in school. Oh, the snow it's snowing. Oh, it's so pretty. Let's take a picture. Oh, I can hardly wait to get out and play in it. That's kind of like we are with firstborn kids. You know, we can hardly wait to take a picture of our firstborn child.
Yeah.
You know, get all the pictures. In fact, the other children sometimes complain that that's who has all the pictures in the photo album, is the first child,
That's
you know?
true.
And then the next snowfall comes along. And the next, those middle children. And it's like, oh, I'm pretending I'm looking out a window now. Oh, it's snowing again. Oh, I'm going to have to drive home through this tonight. And when I get home, I'm going to have to shovel the snow. Oh, shut the curtains. And I'm sure that's how the middle child sometimes feels too, you know? Not as important as that first child. And then, of course, there's the blizzard, which is what I refer to in my book as the last child.
The last child, okay. Yeah.
Because they're always involved in a blizzard of hair-raising, crazy schemes to draw the attention away.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Well, that's very insightful, very insightful knowledge, I think, you know, for teachers, but you know, also families to be aware of this. Yeah, so boy, what a wonderful teacher you are. I can see where all your students are very blessed to have a teacher like you that's really, you got your heart and your soul into it, and you love those kids, and you're drawing out the best out of them, and helping them to, you know, develop and to hone, you know, those skills or just who they are as people, and to realize how important they are, that they are special. Yeah. And so you know, I know you've got a strong faith, and so I don't know, as far as your faith testimony or your salvation story, you know, as far as what you like to communicate with people.
Okay.
You want to draw a little bit on that?
When I was a little girl, probably 6 or 7 years old. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' farm down in Missouri, and they had one of those big old tents. You remember those old, revival tents? Yeah. And they had a special speaker come to their community that night in Lineville, Missouri, Iowa. And he came and spoke to us and told us a verse in the Bible, God's word, that said, we have all sinned and come short of God's perfect standard. Romans 3:23. And hey, as a little girl, I knew I was a sinner.
Okay.
I knew I goofed up, because otherwise I wouldn't have spent so much time in my mama's timeout chair in the kitchen. And he went on to say that the wages of that sin in Romans 6:23 was death or separation from God. And I didn't like that word separated, because as a little girl back home, I faced death every day, Jeff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, I lived across the street from a 65-acre cemetery in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay. Yeah,
But
that's good.
seriously, you know, as a little
Well, you
child,
see that every
seeing
day,
that,
yeah.
And
Always
I
reminded.
wondered what was going to happen to me when I died. So when that speaker man at my grandma's church told me all those things, and he said, this is what you can do to receive the gift of eternal life, so you know where you're going when you die. And you'll never be separated from those you love who have also made that choice. I thought, this is for me. I want to do that. So I turned around in the back seat of my grandparents' car going home that night, and I just called out to God and said, dear Lord, please forgive me of my sin. Give me the gift of eternal life and help me to live for you. And from that moment on, even though I don't understand it all, I know God's Spirit came to live within me, and that peace has been there for me for a long time. And I love that. Gotten through a lot of things, Jeff.
In your testimony is what you've just said. You've done that in your life. You've been doing that. You have really been an inspiration to people, and you, in your life, has touched the lives of so many, and so how grateful we are for you.
Been good.
And so, well, anyway, thank you so much,
Thank
Pam
you.
Wilson. Thank you for being our guest, and once again, writing the book, Falling Into My Place. A book that can be purchased on Amazon.com. And I want to thank all of you for joining us this day as well.